This is Purpose City, Stories of Humanity in Action, presented by Executive Wealth Management. Guests on Purpose City do not necessarily reflect an endorsement of Executive Wealth Management.
Іди від мене, ти моя кохана, зійди з очей, мене не забувай. Я син степів, а серце партизана, на мене жде з побідою весь край. Я син степів, а серце партизана, на мене жде з побідою весь край. Сьогодні нас Карпати зустрічають, а завтра, знай, Волинь вітає нас. Звідсіль підемо просто аж на Київ, щоби звільнити рідний нам Донбас.
Very nice.
It's just a little bit of a song of resistance that starts out with a freedom fighter saying, "Go away from me, my loved one, but don't forget me. I have to go and defend my land." And so it's very pertinent today, even with so many women and children that have been fleeing the violence in Ukraine. They've had to leave their country, but the men are staying behind to fight for their freedom.
Wow. That's powerful. Which is the case for your brother, is that correct, Oksana?
Yes, he's staying in Kyiv and defending his country, and my sister with her daughter left, and reluctantly, they didn't want to leave, but they had to save themselves.
And they from Kyiv?
From Kyiv, yeah.
And where do they flee to?
Oh, they crossed many borders. First, they stayed just in western Ukraine, Carpathia region, and they seemed safe over there, but her friend with whom she left wasn't feeling okay, and she said, let's go further, and they crossed first, went to Romania, and then Austria, then, so right now they're in Italy. I don't remember how many.
They made it to Italy.
They made it to
so
Italy.
How did they travel?
By car.
By car.
They had car.
And how do you keep in contact with them? How do you keep updated like that?
Oh, there's a Viber app which helps us to connect. So we talk every day. I check on her every day, and I'm asking her to answer.
Does that go outside of then the communications are being bombed and that kind of thing, but these apps you're able still to communicate in the country?
So far.
I actually was on a conversation today with an organization called Access Now, which supports digital security and throughout the world. And they were saying that still there is still a lot of access to internet, but usually when Russian forces occupy a region, almost the first thing they do is try to cut off
communication.
All mobile communication.
So do you hear from your brother then?
Brother-in-law.
I'm sorry.
I don't communicate with him, but my sister does, and I'm asking about him from her, and she says that he doesn't share much information with her, at least not bad one.
I see.
Also says everything's fine.
He's
I'm okay.
in his communication.
Yeah, he's trying to be supportive, like emotionally supportive to her, but obviously she's trying to support him too.
Right. How often do you hear from your sister?
Every day.
Every day.
Every day. That's 28 days
Wow.
in a row as long as this word comes.
What other family do you have then?
Well, that's my closest family, my sister, but also her mother-in-law over there. But my cousin left Kyiv, just next to Kyiv in Zhytomyr region, with two small children. They actually wanted to leave for Poland, but the line was so long with cars. They stayed for many, many hours. Like, I don't remember exactly the number, but they decided to return and just go back home.
Really?
To Kyiv and then to Zhytomyr region.
So If they're in Italy, where do they know people there? What do these people do?
Somehow they found her friend with whom she left. She's a veterinarian. Thank you. And she found a job somehow, probably online, and they invited to come. But also some other people live in their house, which is somewhere on a Tuscany region, which is actually very beautiful. And they're just staying in that house. They have room to be, and nobody told them how long they can stay there. So far, they're okay.
So it's horrific circumstances, but that's probably the best case scenario, right? Because then there's millions that don't have a house to stay in.
That's also true. But I heard stories. Just one of people I met just recently said that they have house or maybe apartment in Poland, and they just let people to stay there because they support Ukrainians in this tough situation.
Right. And do you hear that's pretty open in that most are being received that way when they're crossing the borders, that they're being welcomed, or there's people waiting to feed them, give them a place to stay, and this kind of thing?
That's amazing how supportive people are, because everyone understands this situation and trying to help and support people from Ukraine, and it's amazing. I'm so thankful that people like that exist in the whole world.
I would say that is so heartwarming that the Polish nation, in fact, has already had about 1 million Ukrainians living in Poland who went there for work because the economy hasn't been great in Ukraine. And here's an additional 2 million coming in. So they've been very generous. There's stories of, in some ways, yes, her sister and niece, they're fortunate they had a car to get out, but there's train loads of people coming in with nothing but a suitcase, or ones that escaped cities that are under direct attack. And there's Poles that are just holding up signs saying you need a place to stay. You can stay as long as you want. Obviously, that can only last for so long,
for sure,
because at some point the capacity of the country to accept so many refugees is going to be it'll be strained, and I think that's where some of the big agencies are kicking in, or even organizations such as Lifeline that are helping with feeding and meals, because people are coming in hungry. There's stories of people having days of trying to get through on trains, walking across the border,
right,
spending a whole bunch of time where everything's uncertain. Other countries too, Slovakia, Hungary, Moldova, Romania, they've all been very generous as well.
So did I overhear you say that you were there as early as last October?
Yes.
In Ukraine?
Yes, just to visit, and we're lucky we did this.
Yeah. And the feeling there's always tension with Russia, but was there a feeling that this was soon in coming, and that this kind of crisis was close at hand, or was there just kind of a calm that things were going on as normal can be?
Not on the streets. It was completely normal. Restaurants open, cafes, people around walking very freely without any tension. It was completely fine.
There was a kind of a weird normality because, as you know, Russia, in fact, invaded 8 years ago when it occupied Crimea in 2014, and then later essentially started what it claims was a civil war in eastern Ukraine. But that was pretty localized and far away from Kyiv or a lot of other big cities or the rest of the country. And so it dragged on. It was this kind of war of attrition, of sometimes there'd be more military activity or shelling, sometimes less. You'd usually, learn of a few soldiers every week being killed through sniper fire or artillery shelling and the like. But for the most part, for a lot of the country, it felt like it was somewhere distant, right? So in Kyiv, while there was sentiment of saying we want this war to stop, we want Russia's unfairly invading us, it didn't hit everyday life. Mm-hmm. The fact of them coming in militarily, bombing cities, was a total shock to everybody. And I think even though U.S. intelligence was saying it's coming, and when Russia started having its military exercises and claiming that they were just exercises, but with, we heard the figures of 150,000 troops kind of in various parts of Ukraine. I think nobody in Ukraine really thought that it would actually happen. They knew of the threat, but they thought that somehow it just wouldn't. And
it's impossible to something like that to happen.
Well, the idea of we're in the 21st century of a nuclear power just going and starting this kind of brutality is, even now it's hard to process that it could happen.
Yeah, and we're in a generation of people, but myself included, that this kind of rhetoric and this kind of actions is usually, something from history books.
Yeah.
Not something on the current news. Yeah. So Audra is here from Life Christian Mission, as you mentioned. And what does your organization do? And what happened yesterday?
Yeah.
And what do you continue to do in situations like this?
Yeah. So Lifeline Christian Mission has been around for over 40 years now. We established ourselves as an international mission organization, beginning our work in the country of Haiti, simply focusing on educating children with Christian education and planting churches. And that's where it all began. And from there, we started to branch out into multiple countries. So now we're serving in 9 nations, including the United States and Canada. And so our heartbeat is really just to mobilize, develop, and empower people in communities, however we can do that. What we did yesterday with the meal pack was mobilizing people here in the United States to serve. So not only do we encourage our field leaders to mobilize people to serve within the country, we encourage United States citizens and Canadians and whoever else we can get to serve and give back in a way in their communities. But that will also bless people in other nations.
Yeah. So yesterday was very impressive. It was the first time I had been in that. You guys know what you're doing, get it under control. And what happened was Executive Wealth Management, Life Christian Mission came in, set up what they do, which is helps unprofessional people. We're professional people, but not in meal packing. Not in meal packing for sure. Quickly learn how to meal pack.
Sure.
You have a process. And we were able to get, I believe, 2,000 bags, which equals about 11,000 meals put together.
Yes. So one of the areas of ministry that Lifeline spends a lot of time on and we travel a lot of miles for is this meal packing ministry. We pack upwards of between 10 and 15 million meals a year. Wow. So yesterday, your group was a part of that number of what we will be packing this year. Specifically, you all focused on packaging meals for the Ukrainian refugees. These meals will be sent most likely to Romania or Poland. We are partnering with Feed the Hungry, who already has shipped our first container over, and we are working on our second container with Love Does. That's Bob Goff's work. If you are familiar with any of his books that he has written, we're thankful to partner with him and ship meals over as well. So yeah, we ship meals. I think now we're upwards of 33 countries where we have shipped across the world. Wow. And mostly fighting food insecurity due to natural disaster or crisis like we're seeing now in Ukraine. A lot of times it's to help people just get back on their feet. We don't want this to be a long-term solution. We don't want this to create a dependency issue. We want to help create sustainability in community, but sometimes people just need a helping hand to get there. Right. And that's what we did yesterday.
Right.
Yeah.
It was very good. It's a great organization.
Yeah.
So, and I liked it because just hearing about it in media, we had a client want to come in and volunteer to help. Local residents want to come in and help because people hear these atrocities happening. You don't really know what to do. It's on the far side of the world. 2 great things came out of to pull Nick and Oksana in to what we were doing. And even in these conversations, I'm hoping shows people that it's not the other side of the world. We're all human. They're our neighbors, and our neighbors have people they care about there.
Yeah.
And it's easy to help.
It is.
There's organizations set up where we can help. It's now they know of yours.
Yeah.
And it's easy as a Google search.
Yeah.
Frankly, I found you guys on a Google search.
Yeah.
that you did, and but I feel like it's such a good even community building activity because so now I know you, and I know Michelle, and we've said anytime something else like this is going on, let us know. Because of that solidarity of all people, we're feeling it so strongly as Ukrainians, and we need to give back to other parts of the world that are suffering.
Well, the thing is there's food insecurity everywhere, even here in the United States, and it's a symbol of hope these meals that we package they're rice fortified meals. They're high in nutrition and protein, but it's also just a bit of hope for somebody that might not have a meal or two. So we see and hear stories quite frequently of just how it was an answer to somebody's prayers that they received these meals. And so we know that it's not just meeting a physical need, but more than that.
Sure, absolutely. And so the idea of, we all share the same planet. We're all human. We just speak different languages and sometimes wear different color clothes. It's about the sum of it. And that really is the theme, isn't it, of the foundation you work for?
Well, yeah, I work for the Charles Stewart Mott Foundation. It's up in Flint, and its mission is to support a just, equitable, and sustainable society. And so we do have programming around the world, a lot of it in the United States when it comes to education, environmental programs. I work in an area called civil society. So we've been trying to support vibrant civil society in Ukraine and in Eastern Europe for many years. In fact, we did a lot of work in Russia itself until
what does that look
until
like?
we were uninvited a few years back. Usually it means groups, nonprofit groups. We kind of take them for granted in the U.S. that they exist, they're able to register, they're able to do their work, raise money. But in a lot of societies, that is not that prevalent or doesn't come naturally. People give, and people are generous all over the world. Make no mistake about that. But often it's informal, and that's good too. But sometimes when we have a little bit of formality to a little bit of organizational structure, like for example, we're hearing about Lifeline, able to do everything it does. That's helpful then for people to find the way where they can contribute, and they could do that for humanitarian work, for social service, for advocating, sometimes calling out governments to say, hey, you're limiting us, protecting rights, advocating for justice. So all these things are important, make up civil society. We as a grant maker will give grants to groups who do those kinds of things.
Okay. And, being a high-level decision maker and planner and being able to give grants to people, how did it feel to actually put your hands on some rice and fill some bags?
Super. I'll tell you why. Because, it's one thing to work as a professional where I'm trying to direct money of a guy who passed away in 1971, Charles Stewart Mott, left a big endowment, and now we have a whole structure that gets money to organizations in need. But that feels like just a job and professional. And same thing even in a personal life. It's a different thing when I might write a check or, hit the PayPal button. It's a little bit impersonal. The fact that I can come in and physically do something, it provides a whole different level of meaning to the process of contributing to the betterment of other people.
Sure.
I love that.
I actually was imagining people opening those packages and looking at picture how to prepare those meals, and they would speak Ukrainian, maybe Russian, but still they would be from Ukraine. It felt so real.
Absolutely. What a full circle moment for you all. Just imagining the people who would be receiving these meals.
Yeah.
It could be somebody you know.
Yeah.
Could be. We're grateful for that again so much.
Absolutely.
So what's this instrument you're holding?
Well, it's called a Bandura. It's got a very nice sound. It's a uniquely Ukrainian instrument. It was essentially a bard's instrument, like a minstrel and the banduristi were, as we call them, were very important in Ukrainian history because they were the sources of news, of morality, of in playing in squares and speaking, and singing. They would provide some kind of uplifting to the nation. And if you think in times where there were, centuries ago, where there were no newspapers and the like, the messages they deliver of things that are going on, some battles that were won or leaders in society. Also, they did a lot of religious chants, and sometimes just, dance music to make people feel happier.
Yeah, I asked you if you could do Jailhouse Rock. You said Stairway to Heaven.
Well, I won't do Stairway to Heaven now. I wrote it up because my daughter really loved it, and I wrote up an arrangement because sometimes I'll teach at we will hold. We haven't for the past couple summers because of COVID, but we would hold Bandura camps, summer music camps. But so the role of the instrument is quite important in the kind of the history, and in so much so that many times in history, starting with the Russian Empire and later even in the Soviet Union, they would try to limit it. There was even one case in 1933 where they called a big convention of bandurists and actually took them out and shot them because they understood that. There's even a quote of a famous Ukrainian poet that said, if you want to destroy the soul of the Ukrainian people, gather up all their banduras and burn them.
Wow.
It's kind of that important.
Music is powerful.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful instrument.
Thank you.
And you either have very beautiful nails or you have something going on there to play it.
I wish my nails were more beautiful, but I have to use finger picks because otherwise.
So you pluck that instrument.
Yeah. So
it's like a harp.
Yeah, about that, right. Exactly, but it's backed by wood, so it gives a little bit different, a brighter sound. A little bit more dulcimer-like sound than a harp would be.
Off the cuff, would you be able to close this conversation with like a Ukrainian anthem that you know? First, before you do, I'd like to thank everybody. Thank you, Audra and Oksana.
Thank you for inviting.
Our thoughts and prayers are with friends and family.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
And when you're ready.
Okay. It's the first cut of the Ukrainian anthem. The Ukraine is still alive, its glory, and its freedom. And so that's being sung a lot. It's very heartening that we hear like the New York Met sing it. The Detroit Symphony Orchestra opened with it in a concert last week. Ukrainians aren't used to hearing their music so much on that kind of a stage, but we're very grateful for how much the world has stepped up and is in solidarity with us. By the way, if anybody wants to hear a show of a chorus that I play in called the Ukrainian Bandurist Chorus, April 2nd at the Macomb Macomb Center for Performing Arts, 7 p.m. So if you can make it, please do.
It's on my calendar.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks again.
In uncertain times, our goal is to help you live with confidence. We aim to help you through each stage of life for generations and strive to reach your retirement goals. Our partnerships allow us to stretch beyond investing and planning, navigate the changing tax environment, coordinate your estate plan and asset transfer strategy to confidently leave the legacy you desire. All of this to help you live with confidence.